Just a real quick agenda, just a tiny bit of housekeeping to start things off. And then we're going to hear right away from two of our members, both from Yoti and FaceTec, who have different stories to tell. I think they actually work together in the background. Give you a quick update, and then we'll have a discussion. So, first bit, two things. One, standard for our meetings, we don't really allow bots. So I've already turfed one. The meeting recording is available to all members. It's available in the meeting portal. But additionally, this is a new thing that we discovered and got proof of last night. We realized this week that we are having trouble getting on your calendars and getting the newsletters to you. So for anyone live or listening on the recording, couple of things. One, make sure that Ayra.forum is in your not on your spam list. We're seeing two things. One is people are receiving them. Our system shows it is received. Others, we had a GDPR block. We don't know what HubSpot did. It blocked a ton. Over half of our members were not receiving anything from us. We didn't realize that. Additionally, we're sending out invitations for things like this through email. They're not calendar invitations. They are written, hey, here's a meeting. Click here to register or to put it on your calendar. We're going to be beefing that up. But the calendar is always available in the member portal. When you get the PDF of this, all members will receive that. The link here goes right to that calendar as well. That QR code on the screen goes to the calendar. And in the member portal, I've got a little pink arrow pointing at where it is. It's at the bottom left. That calendar is always available. Talking with executive directors of other very successful organizations, Eclipse, Linux, calendars and emails are the bane of existence for membership-driven organizations. Everyone is really busy. And the last thing we need is more newsletters, but that's one of the ways that we have to get a hold of folks. So that's me doing the administrative piece. I want to hand over to John. John is recently John has been on our board transition board for since we started. Yoti is one of the founding members of GAN of Ayra, and Yoti has been fulfilling a role of leading on the trust ecosystem side, but has also joined now as a commercial member. So, John, I understand you have some cool stuff to show us. So I will stop sharing my screen. You're on mute, my friend. Oh, he's kept finger up. Hey, Tan, I hope you're keeping safe.
There we go. Sorry, I couldn't find the button. That helps. Yeah. So, thank you. So, yeah, John Abbott, Chief Commercial Officer at Yoti. I've been around in Yoti for sort of nigh on 10 years now, and seen the evolution from before we had products and things to sell into what is now a nice and healthy growing business globally. For those that don't know, I'll be very brief, but Yoti is a digital identity and age verification business globally. I won't put slides out and everything here. We can share them if anyone wants more info. But we work with some of the largest organizations around, from Meta through to TikTok, through to governments, through to adult sites, through to sort of you name it, retailers. And so we get a very unique perspective on identity and age and how they sort of intersect with what is a growing market. What I'm just very laser focused today is just to cover off two things that we are looking at launching. They're currently in beta, so kind of early previews. You might have seen some of this come out on some of our socials and on LinkedIn. They are relevant, and I want to say this up front, to the Ayra Cards initiative in one way or another. And I think the first one is verified video calls. So I liked Darrell's unintended intro that he doesn't want any bots on. This is something to help do that as a product set. So I'll run through that, and that is then sort of followed by a digital ID credentials portal. So this again will come back to Ayra, and I'll try and tie those in at the end of each quick sort of run through. And I won't steal Jay's time, so I'll try and keep to the points, so he can give me a virtual kick. So I'm not going to do this in slides or any other stuff. I'm just going to show you actually a quick run through a video of the product. So verified video calls as the first one, is intended for what everyone, I'm sure, will have come across in some format or the other of interviews or others that are already happening now, where you might get to your final stage and you're not quite sure that that personality was shining through as much as it was in the earlier stages of the interview, and actually then the person at the end of that line was not a real human being or was an augmented individual. How that comes about, it could be in other quite high profile issues in the UK, certainly with Marks and Spencers and with Co-op, where they had people off camera to sort of use that as a way of engineering into a business by compromising that position to sit there and listen to a whole bunch of information and then use it against them. So who is on this call is one aspect to try and sort out. So verified video calls in this beta is a wraparound we've done around Zoom. In the future, that is what we're looking to validate to put that into a more bot-like approach where that would be your trusted bot. But at the moment, we're putting that wraparound each of Zoom and plans to do that in Teams and in Google. And that gives you a management dashboard that allows you to have a verified video call. It means you start your Zoom call like normal, and your invites would go out to individuals and they would have a choice, depending on how you configured it, to either do nothing and have a boring old Zoom call. You could have a liveness detection so that you are at least a real human being at the end of it, or you could step up to a full digital ID. This is definitely a human being matched to a government issued document. The Ayra card link there is the sort of natural progression of that is, well, actually, I am John Abbott and I am the Chief Commercial Officer at Yoti and I'm still currently employed. And that is something that could be a sort of an Ayra standard if we looked at that. So that is the link for those two. And bear with me, I have a Vimeo. I'll just quickly show you through for speed of time. Give me one sec. Should. If I do. Can I share? That's the question. I don't think I can. I'm not sure I've got permissions to share it, actually, Darrell. Maybe I can't.
Let me see why that share settings.
No, ignore me. It's all right, I've got it now. There we go.
Okay, you're ignored.
Got it. Hopefully you should be able to see that there. There we go. Right. So there's no audio on this, so I'm just going to talk you very briefly through it as the sort of subset as we go. So you get invited as an organization to create a sort of management account and maintenance account on this. Just go back slightly. So you're going to set up and create a meeting. And as you would do in any other kind of any other route. You then have sort of two main options in there that we've included. These could include more, but as I said, digital ID or a liveness option. This is very similar to our age verification solutions that are out there where there's multiple options that could be added on. It's just those two. And you can choose how you want to do it within the configuration of what that would do. So this means that you're going to get an email come out to invitees to say, you can confirm and join what is a verified video call in your calendar. So you should have plugins into the main calendar apps as well. So in this case, I'm dialing in and joining with a digital ID. So I'll just go back there very briefly. Oops, sorry. So in this case, I've scanned using my Yoti app to get in effectively to register into the meeting. So this is what I'm sharing here. In this case would be my name and photo. But again, that could be extended if you think of an Ayra cards into more details or a business staff ID, authorization levels. There could be a fair amount of things that could do into that. Are you a shareholder? That sort of thing is a very interesting concept. I've scanned in, shared my email address and my photo, which come across. That could be extended as you go. Just to touch on this, and as a nod to Jay, and FaceTec, we obviously use FaceTec. We have both active and passive liveness operating across different parts of our product set. In this case, we're using our recently sort of IB to level 3 passive liveness in this particular solution. But that is just then preventing against those attacks in there. Equally, looking at securing the camera feed behind the camera on the desktop as well, to make sure you're not a bot. The next step to that, obviously, you're consenting to do this, or you could do it in a liveness. In this case, so if you either done a digital ID, or you could use a liveness, which is showing two willing participants in this. And so a novel thing that we then have is the ability that you get people in, and I really don't like the look of Darrell, or he's moved away from his desk, or he's come back, or the bookcase has gone behind him, or it's a slightly different thing, and I now get to challenge that person. So you're now saying, your face doesn't fit anymore, I want you out. So there is an ability, willing participant number one, Altaf and Vlad. So this then just gives an ability to either in the screen that you've got, you basically have a challenge that pops up on your screen to revalidate yourself, and you just go back around the loop. And so this is stopping the need, I guess, in that sense, to be perpetually monitoring the feed, because there's a kind of privacy angle to just sitting watching people's faces on video calls all the time. But equally, it does give the control back to that host. After the call is finished, there's effectively an audit report that comes out. You started the call at this time, finished it this time. These are the participants, and these were the methods they verified with at the end of that. At the moment, that's in our beta, that's a PDF that comes out. Obviously, we would like to see that as a integrated API kind of output future. And then I think on the rest of this call, there are other organizations. We've just used LexisNexis in this test. So you get just in there, that is effectively, you'll be building up your profile of meetings and sort of other audit trails that will come in each of your report. So we can, again, customize that and see what would suit business needs. And then lastly, I think it moves on. Yes, we've got some suitable blurb. I won't bore everyone to go into that. And so my kind of like closing point to this, which is somewhat of an ask as well, we are really looking at had that beta around in Zoom, looking to extend that in different platforms, but equally, we're very aware that is a wrapper type approach. In the way, having modern bots come into into calls as a format of having something that is sitting in the call that does this as a sort of an AI sentinel kind of watcher, may be the better format. But again, not wanting to go and build the world in one go. So this is the early preview of that. I can see Daniel. Hi, you've got your hand up.
Yes, no, not a surprise there. So I'm curious. The main thing that jumps to me is, I guess, two things. You talked about a wrapper. So you're talking about Zoom. What is the plan with how this would integrate with other products? Because we have a product that I think has already got some of what you're talking about moving towards. So I'm wondering how there might be sort of interplay there.
I promised Darrell it wouldn't be anything to do with the sales call. So, but no, it's an API that can go into those. We're sort of proactively pushing them into. Well, it's on the Zoom marketplace, so you can go and download it there. Cool. But most likely, I think always striving for what's the slickest experience. Inviting your Sentinel to pop into a call and make sure you're not getting any AI entrance or substitutes into that would be a useful piece.
Cool. And one other quick question quickly. Actually, no, there were two versions of the same one. Thank you.
So I'll be very quick, and then I have one other which I'll come through on credentials issuance. But any other questions on that? No. Okay, bear with me. So the other aspect that we're looking at is, and I probably won't go through show you the details of it, but imagine that you had, and we're all in the credentials world, so there is an API that is available for some time with Yoti, for issuing credentials into a wallet or a holder wallet. With our beta release now is for a credential portal. So the idea is this is a SaaS type solution that any business of really any size could come and create an organization, an account, sign up with SSO, and effectively they're up and running. We started that with a nod to the first personhood roots. We started that with digital ID cards. We've been doing those for a number of years, mainly since the beginning of COVID, where you've got a face, your department, your title, and it's been issued by the HR department as a verified credential into a wallet. And so it's just trying to reduce the barriers to entry for a lot of other organizations to be able to sign up. Credit on both of these products is through to Altaf, who's some of you might have met at some of the events. He's our director of engineering and AI in Yoti. The concept for that beta is really to present the SaaS type solution for being able to define, and there's a sort of UI on the screen. I'll share some of this afterwards, but you're able to then view a mock-up of what your credential would look like. I'd like field 1 to say this, field 2 to say that. Yes, I do want a photo out of the wallet, and it should be literally as that quick. You can then hit define and then issue it. It comes out to you much like in a similar way in an email into your accepted wallet. We've done this as a sort of closed loop in Yoti at the moment, but the concept would be this is a nice and easy way to issue verifiable credentials. Again, they'd be authorized, usually with a biometric into the person's wallet. And then that issuer has full control to revoke or amend or update that credential. So the nod to Ayra cards, again, would be what we'd like to be able to get down is that you could save those creations as a template. And why wouldn't you then save that as a template for staff ID for large enterprise? As a community, you may want to reuse those. But as you imagine, if you then start to expand the list of credentials and types that we could do there, not just in employment, but in other walks of life, that just leads to more of a community-based public or private templates for my organizations that I can use or reuse. So see this very much as the start, but that's the summary. Any questions on credentials?
I'll jump in with one quick question. John, I'd love to visit with you on the credentials work, maybe with you and Altaf, and do a recording for the members so they can see what that is, because I think it's also going to help us explore what the Ayra protocol helps with. How do we do a standard dance for video verification or age verification, or to your last point, getting the community to be the issuers, your church, your employer, the club you're in, type of a thing. So that's great.
Yeah, and so we have I think Christina's on the call. So Christina, I think Christina's on the call somewhere. Yes.
Yes.
So Christine's our brand partnerships lead. So part of that is in trying to engage in that lower, I guess, smaller end of the community to try and get that feedback of what works for the most easy way to sort of point and shoot, and you end up with a staff ID or a first personhood credential. You never even heard the words verifiable credential, and you never heard the words W3C format or anything else. It's just I've got it.
Please no.
Great. So that's really the aim to get to that point.
Daniel.
Very exciting. Would love to. I just would love to work out what's the most appropriate way to start a conversation.
Via Darrell.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Via Darrell. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
I just wasn't.
Yep.
I don't want to tread on toes.
We don't. So. Yeah, and that's one great question, Daniel. It's one of the things that, we're not a trade association, but we're very happy when our members are working together. What we can't do as part of our neutral, antitrust, competition friendly aspect is that's not what these meetings are about. If you guys meet each other here, perfect. We're not here to carve up a market or anything, but yeah, we'll definitely get you introduced. I'm sure you have John's email somewhere, but we'll make sure you guys are introduced. And
thanks.
And rather than take out any more time, because I didn't want to go through a slide deck, it'd take too long, but this is just a sort of idea of the homepage and logged in. Ignore that because I'm presenting it, comes up with that. But your you're effectively then creating what are my card details, and we've got a kind of mock up for it to be nice and simple. This is what it's going to look like on the homepage. This is how you're going to view your credential, and you just literally walk through sort of five or six steps, and you're done, which is nice and simple.
Perfect. Awesome.
I will stop.
Well, I was going to show my screen, but all my screen says is Jay Meier, FaceTec. So FaceTec is one of our newest members. Jay, do you want to take it away? And Jay is going to talk about, and I'm going to get the terms wrong. Jay's been really helping educate me. And part of one of the reasons that Jay and the team at FaceTec have joined is to help our community understand what are the states of the art, the business requirements that you want when you do person binding. And Jay, you want to take it from here?
Sure. Hi, gang. Thanks for having me today. I think it was a W.C. Fields or Groucho Marx said, I wouldn't want to be a member of any club that would have me.
Yep. Yep.
Well, here we are. So I do have a slide presentation, but it's a slide presentation that was not really designed for this forum. Would people like me to put that up on the screen or just kind of talk about stuff?
I think the slides you have are helpful, Jay, myself.
Okay. I'll share it, and I apologize ahead because it's larger. Let's see. It's large. It's like 20 slides, but I'm not going to go through all of them. Okay. Let's see. And I normally don't do this. Well, this will work for our purposes. Okay. So FaceTec, we're not like other companies. We're an OEM software vendor. We sell our software to partners primarily. Yoti, I believe, is a partner or was a partner. I don't actually know what Yoti does with our stuff. That's not my area, but we work with about 150 IDV vendors, identity verification service providers. They build our software into their systems. And then we also work directly with a number of large marquee type organizations like the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and a few others. So we have a device SDK, we have a server SDK. The device SDK has been downloaded, going on 3 billion times. It's downloaded 3 million times a day. We are on track to do a little over 4 billion liveness sessions over the next 12 months. We are working with several states in the United States as the liveness the liveness for sure, but potentially also the biometric matching for their mobile driver's license systems. And we'll move on from there. So if you're here, you probably know that all of our identity data has been stolen. It's online, it's available for sale, and bad guys use it to make fake IDs, right? So they represent themselves as you so they can get access to your privileges. The thing that makes identity data valuable is that we can trust the source. This is a big problem for systems like the self-sovereign mechanisms out there. We don't know who the sources are really. They may be cryptographically validated, but working that out is a problem. The relationship between verified identity data and the relevant biometric data is critically important. That binding must exist. Otherwise, we can separate the identity data from the physical human being. And all of that has to be immutable. So just a little backdrop, a credential, everybody's talking about credentials, right? A credential is a thing that binds a human being, a physical human being, to a verified identity and then to privileges that have been allocated to that identity. And this seems to have been lost somewhere along the way. Today, we prove an identity by uploading a copy of a driver's license or whatever and doing a background scrub on this person. And if the picture matches, then we think it's Jay, right? The problem is, as we know, that all of our identity data is available for sale. And we know that AI is pretty darn good at making fake driver's licenses and fake credentials that can be uploaded to the IDV systems. And if you're following any of the studies from the Department of Homeland Security, nobody is very good at validating an ID document online. And so it shouldn't surprise anybody that the nature of fraud today, the nature of online crime, the nature of hacking today is the transfer of a valid credential to somebody that's not allowed, not authorized to use it. It could be a driver's license, it could be a password, it could be an X509 certificate, it could be any type of credential that proposes to bind a person to a privilege that they're entitled to. And this was taken from the 2020, this chart was from the 2025 Verizon Enterprise Security Report. Like, depending on who you ask, it's between 65 and 85% of breaches, hacks, online frauds, blah, 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 is the vector of choice is the transfer of a credential to somebody that's not authorized to use it. And that's a big problem. Okay. Of course, as I mentioned, we have AI. This is actually an AI rendering of my driver's license, or an old driver's license of mine. I'm no longer in Minnesota, USA. And this could be used to upload to an IDV system or present. Otherwise, AI is getting pretty good at faking stuff. So one of the solutions out there are these cryptographically secured identity documents. We have the mobile driver's license standard, 8010, whatever it is, that was ratified in iteration 5 was issued in 2021. We've got verifiable credentials, we've got DIDs, we've got all these different things. They're all elegant. They're all relatively secure. There's a dozen or so different identity frameworks around the world today. None of them talk to each other. But from our perspective, the worst thing about all of these systems is that there's almost nothing binding these credentials to an actual legitimate human being. They're binding to a device and to an identity. Okay. And in fact, these schematics that here I scraped from the websites of various organizations. The one in the upper left is from AMVA, the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. It is their rendering of how the mobile driver's license system is secured by cryptography. And you notice in each of these, 3 of them anyway, they talk about a holder. It doesn't talk about an owner. It talks about who's holding the device that the credential is bound to. And that is the last leg. The problem here is that verifying and authenticating an identity is a deterministic process. Okay, as much as the cryptography guys like to talk about, or excuse me, it is a probabilistic process. As much as the cryptography guys like to talk about deterministic verification, it can't be done with a physical human being because there's an analog gap between the device and the human. Until Elon Musk gets his way and we can start implanting chips in people's brains permanently that we can attach a certificate to, if there is a possibility, any possibility that an inappropriate person is in control of a device that a cryptographically secured credential is bound to, it is a probabilistic calculation. 100% deterministic times 99.9% probabilistic gives us a probabilistic determination as to who this person really is. And I love to talk about anonymous biometrics. Most people here probably know this, but the vast majority of people, even in this industry, don't know this. The biometric sensors and the biometric systems in your devices do not bind the biometric data to verified identity data anywhere. It is anonymous biometric, and it can be changed with the PIN. If I get control of your phone and I have your PIN, I can put my biometric data in your device, in the secure element in your device, and that API call out will say yes or no. When I match my face against what's stored in that secure enclave or whatever, it will tell the relying party that I am you. And that is a growing problem today. So the nature of the problem, again, going back to the system, is that there's no binding. Okay, we aren't binding actual human beings to these credentials. We're binding everything to devices. And so we can't control for everything out there anymore. We don't know the physical identity data that's out there, and we don't know who's in control of the device that the trustworthy identity data is bound to. So FaceTec created a new type of biometric. We say it's face, but it's kind of face. What FaceTec did was figure out how to use the perspective distortions that are created when you move your face further and away and closer to a camera. We were able to collect those perspective distortions and aggregate them into what is basically three-dimensionality measures of a face. Your face is unique to you, at least in part, because it is 3D, and the 2D sensor is not good at interpreting 3D data. So by taking about 120 or so video frames while you are using the system, it takes about 1.5 seconds. We can measure the perspective distortions that are produced by the 2D sensor as it tries to figure out what to do with three-dimensional data from your face. And that actually is extraordinarily accurate biometric data. Importantly, what that allows us to do is use any 2D sensor in any smart device. And that is an interesting feature today. We are not vulnerable to perspective distortions that cause other face systems to have problems. Our technology does not rely on data like skin tone. We don't care about skin tone because the three-dimensionality provides 100 times more data than most other template systems out there. So we're not vulnerable to bias that other systems are vulnerable to. And we do a number of other things to try and secure the data, and which I can get into more if you really want to deep dive it. Our liveness detection, I think, and I've been studying this stuff since 1998, our liveness detection is second to none. We're the only vendor that has gone as far as it can go, anybody can go, in terms of independent test lab certifications of our liveness, both from a presentation attack defense, but also an injection attack defense. We've gone as far as you can go in any of these tests. We're the first, and I don't know if anybody else has reached any type of level 5 in any way. On top of that, we do all the cryptographic penetration tests. And this, if you want to read more about it, you can, that site there at the bottom is available to check it out. I mentioned that we capture a lot of data, orders of magnitude more data. I like to just do this. Length times width gives you one number. Length times width times depth gives you a much bigger number, right? And in a statistical probability calculation, the more data that you can measure, the higher confidence you can have in the match outcome. So in a 3D to 3D type match, we could, with a false reject rate of 1%, which is the standard, theoretically, we could have a false accept rate of 1 in 125 million. That is, I mean, that's not been proven in the real world. So, you know, take that for a grain of salt. But we have been shown.
Jay, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the areas where when I met with Jay and Andrew Hughes from FaceTec, I was harking back to, if those who were there in Toronto at our first tech summit in August 24, one of the questions that was raised by, at the time it was by Jim Ryan of State Farm Quinata, was how does a company who is not deep and savvy about all of these technologies go to make sure they're doing the right thing for their app so that they can have the proper, in his case, his concern was, I don't know if he used the term at the time, person binding, know that it was the person who got the thing that they're now presenting. But one of the things you're showing here, Jay, is when you showed me FAR, false acceptance rate, I didn't quite understand it. The way I heard you say this, and let me know if I got this right, because I want to make sure we're telling the right story. A false acceptance rate is basically telling me, hey, no, I am Darrell, but it doesn't think I am. meaning my phone has locked me out because it doesn't think I am who I say I am. My understanding on some of the Android devices that that's actually quite a high rate because they don't want to lock the phone owner out of their phone, which
Mhm.
also means you have a very high error rate, which means you can't trust it in a business context because if it has a 7% false acceptance rate, that means that
Yeah,
there's a pretty good attack vector. If you look similar enough, great. But these are
right.
terms that business owners are not going to know. And one of the things we've been talking about with Jay and with others, including John, is how do we as an organization help our members understand this so that when they go to put things into their apps, when they go to bid on, put out bid documents, that they have some consistency in what they're asking for so that they don't have to become, Billy, if you were to go and
Right.
do this at Pearson, so you don't have to become the biometrics expert. You're
Yeah.
relying upon a business centric as opposed to, hey, do NIST XYZ, which is a very deeply technical thing, not a business concept. So it's one of the reasons why I
So,
wanted to make sure Jay was presenting this. Sorry, Jay.
well, it's okay. I'll see if I can address. I heard a couple different questions there. How does a layman get confident enough to make a decision about this stuff? Well, I want to tell you about an old joke. I first heard this joke in 2001, and I technically am a consultant. Okay, I'm a consultant to FaceTec, amongst other organizations. I do allocate a lot of time to FaceTec. The old joke goes like this: what's the difference between a biometric salesman and a used car salesman? Anybody? The used car salesman can tell you what's wrong with what he's trying to sell you.
Okay.
Okay. Until relatively recently, biometric technologies were not measured, their efficacy was not measured outside of the vendor's own lab. Okay. Which is a big problem. I mean, you can't trust any of that information. And that's why I said theoretically we could hit 100, a false accept rate. Darrell, one other thing I heard you say was you were confusing false accept and false reject.
Oh,
FRR means false reject rate. Okay,
okay.
that is a biometric decision can be
Yep.
wrong two different ways. Okay, it can incorrectly reject the right person, or it can incorrectly accept the wrong person. Okay. FRR, false reject, is incorrectly reject the right person. The false accept rate is let the wrong person in, let the bad guy in. Okay.
Okay.
And because of the way this stuff works, you have to have an understanding of the relationship between both of those measurements for the biometric, right?
Yep.
Because one of the things that biometrics companies used to do a lot, and many of the people still do, is they get to understand your business case, what you're trying to accomplish, and then they tune their system to maximize the benefit in that one thing. But what they don't tell you is that when you maximize one, you reduce the efficacy of the other, typically.
Right.
Okay. So if you are trying to ensure that the right person is never locked out, it basically means you're making it less accurate, which will allow the wrong person in more often. Okay.
Right.
And so you should see biometric performance data in terms of both FRR and FAR as
Right.
they relate to each other. Okay. And some will call that an equal error. There's a relationship to an equal error rate, blah, 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 blah. The benchmark today is to fix the false reject rate at 1%. So, apples to apples, if your false reject rate is fixed at 1%, what is your false accept rate?
Okay.
Okay. And in that case, you want the false accept rate to be as low as possible, right? It never can be zero. But this allows different biometric capabilities to be measured against,
Right.
equally toward each other.
So now
So,
you understand. Now you understand, Jay, why I want to make sure we get this down into business terms so that we don't invert like I just did, or
right,
don't conflate things, so that our members, depending on who they are,
right,
know what the questions are to ask and say, "This is the set of criteria I need because I'm in a very high assurance, high security
sure.
environment," versus this is just making sure you're a live human.
And
There's a
I'm
difference.
There's a big difference between liveness and biometric matching. Okay. Liveness also is measured pretty much the same way. Is a non-living thing allowed to get through, or is this a living person or not? If they are
Yeah.
alive, you measure, they have different terms, but the measurement is effectively the same thing. Okay.
Yep.
Liveness, FaceTec sells liveness. We don't sell other capabilities. We have the biometric matching, which comes sort of included when you buy our liveness capability. And I can get into those details if you want, but I don't think that's what you
Yeah.
guys are interested in right now. So
Well, I think it's something we definitely will want to follow up on.
sure. And so like I said, I'm a consultant. I was a Wall Street analyst and economist for 20 years, focusing on biometrics, cryptography, and smart cards. I wrote a book about this stuff in 2006. I've been consulting ever since, to anybody that'll pay a damn consultant, which seems like not too many people. So there's an answer. You want to get smart about it, hire your best consultant. Uh, and but as that, I've written best practices for DIAC. I've been involved in all kinds of trade associations. I've been involved in all kinds of government organizations. I am in the Cantera group. I've chaired groups there, and working groups and discussion groups. And mostly I give speeches and give talks and cause problems for the industry and other people. So the thing is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to determine if this is a living human being, which is difficult in remote unsupervised environments like online. I mean, if we were standing together, human to human, I can pretty much tell you if you're alive or not, right? But online, it's getting increasingly difficult. And we all hear the horror stories of, presentation attacks and deepfake injection attacks. Deepfake injection attacks are by far the bigger problem, the scarier problem, because they scale. Presentation attacks do not scale very well. It's easy to do
Yep.
this, okay? But a server array with the right software can not only mimic a human pretty damn well, but it can spray that. It could call a help desk, for example, 1,000,000 times a second. So the only phone call that gets answered is the fake call, and then that, so there's all kinds of problems with that. And anyway, I will be happy to help educate about those things. So we're talking about binding, right? The credentials are not bound to people anymore. This is just like a kid that was, borrowed his buddy's older brother's driver's license when he was 17 so he could go to the liquor store and buy beer. Same exact vector. That's 85% of the problem out there today, is that same exact vector. And even Gartner likes to say today that hackers are not hacking in, they are logging in. They're using your credentials to get into services and systems and get access to assets that they are not entitled to. So how do we increase that binding? Well, we have to identify the right data, right? Is it a known and trusted source? Department of Motor Vehicles in the United States is sort of the standard. The State Department in the United States is where you get your passport from. They do a pretty extensive background check, but you could be your own source if you're doing an employment scenario. You're hiring you're looking at a candidate for an employment role. You'll do your own background check and your own risk profile in your human resources department. So you need to have confidence in the source. Today, the most confidence we can have are in government issuing authorities, national ID programs, passport programs, driver's license programs. Those are the places where we find the highest quality identity data available, right? There is a binding already in place. We have a photograph and we have a verified identity. That relationship between the photo and the identity has been established for a long time. It's irrefutable. The data cannot be changed except through extraordinary circumstances. In the United States, you have to get court approval to change your name. for example, on your driver's license. It's not easy to do, okay? And if you can cryptographically secure it, it makes it even safer. So let's just go back. So if you want to bind a human being to the best verified identity data available, you need to compare this living person's face to the data that's behind the firewall at the DMV or at the passport issuing authority or the national ID program, which means you have to beam biometric data from a device to the behind the firewall at the issuing authority. Remember, the biometric data on your device is not bound to verified identity data. Sorry, Apple, it doesn't do that. Okay, and it all it does is say that this face matches what's already stored, but it doesn't say whose face it is. Okay, and it can be changed. So you can't trust that very much. So if you want the best, you move the biometric data from the device to the verified identity profile somewhere. We prefer legal issuing authorities. That's where the best identity data is. It's not perfect, but it is the best that we have. And then you compare that new face against the stored value that's already bound to the verified identity data. And if it matches, then you can believe that this person sitting here, this living human being sitting here, is the person described by the data behind the firewall. Okay. But that's a big problem in today's world. Everybody's worried about government. I got news for you. The government isn't following you around. They don't care about you and me. There's only a handful of people they really care about. But a lot of people really are worried about the potential for being spied on by government. And if you beam biometric data to the issuing authority, the government might be able to tell that you're opening a bank account at Bank of America or whatever. You're on a porn site, or you are, trying to travel internationally, or whatever it is, right? So that's a big problem. That, in fact, is how FaceTec generates 100% of our revenue today, is moving biometric data to the verified identity data wherever it is. It's almost always behind the firewall. We work on-prem, could work in a cloud, but we don't prefer the cloud. We like on-prem a lot better because it's safer. And so we do a lot of commercial deployments that way. Dating apps. We have a dating app that does like 7 million liveness sessions a month. We've got a company down in South America that's doing 10 million liveness sessions a month. They do nothing. They're kind of like the eBay for South America. They're called Mercado Libre. And we have a lot of vendors that do a lot of liveness sessions. And every time you log on to their app, it takes a liveness proven face scan or face map and matches it against what's attached to the account profile. We have banks that do this, cryptocurrency exchanges, and we're pervasive. We're in 80 countries around the world, and blah, 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 blah. So moving into the government is a problem. So we decided we needed to fix that. We need to do the inverse. Okay, so not only can we move it to the verified identity data behind the firewall, but if you can't do that, can you take the verified identity data and move it to the person who is described by it? Okay, and that's what the cryptographic credentials all try and do, except that they don't do it in a way that binds to the physical human being very effectively. They have pictures, but that really causes problems in the ecosystem. So what we started to do, and there's about 6 companies that are trying to do this, we developed a cryptographically signed biometric barcode. We call it a UR code because it describes who you are. I think it's kind of stupid, but our CEO loves that. It includes verified identity data from the issuing authority, whoever that is. Could be an HR department, could be a bank, could be a government. Doesn't matter to us. Whatever risk profile you're willing to take. So you load it's a standardized QR code, Series 10 or Series 11 QR code. It has verified identity data in it. It has biometric data that was collected when the original identity data was verified and bound to it, right? So we have face vector data and proven identity data embedded in the QR code. And then we've managed to do it in a way that allows us to digitally sign the barcode, okay, which means it's irrefutable. So the UR code is a 2D barcode that can be read by any smart device, and it includes biometric data and identity data of the person. It describes a person wholly, and then it allows the system to extract that biometric data from the barcode and match it against the person's living live face right then and there. And if it matches the data that's in the barcode, it means it matches the data that's behind the firewall, only you don't have to transmit any data behind the firewall. And so this provides privacy, it provides control to the person who owns the data, you and me, right? This can be printed on any type of credential. It could be used digitally as an addendum to a mobile driver's license or something else. It can be printed on any type of credential you want, physical or digital. It doesn't matter. So we think this is going to have some legs in, any of these DIDs, any of these verifiable credentials, any of these other things that need to be more strongly bound to a physical human being. And there you go. That's what we do. We have an app. You can download it for free. You can check it out. It's called the Scan and Match app, and you can play with it and monkey around with it. We have my business card here, has my UR code on it, which I'd be happy to demo for you, but that's all I have. I hope that was helpful. What else can I do?
It's
Questions?
definitely helpful, Jade. Anybody have any questions? I recognize, just heads up, we are 5 minutes from the top of the hour for those who do need to leave. I've got an update. I'll make sure that's recording is available for everybody. But any questions for Jay while we have him? I understand people may have to leave at the top of the hour. But again, we'll have it all recorded.
We'll talk indefinitely, so you need to time me out once in a while.
Cool. I will just jump into a quick member update. I'm going to, I reorganized some slides here. So if you do have the 5 minutes, please stay. If you can stay longer, awesome. Starting off with business, Daniel Beers on the call. We are kicking off in April. One of the POCs, a proof of concept, and it is actually going to be looking at the same concept, a similar concept, and maybe FaceTec and Yoti get involved. The idea being more of an ID badge, that I can show my ID badge with QR code or digitally with the information that we're talking about here, that two things happen. One, process-wise, I do this after I have gone through a high assurance process. I have validated government ID, knowing that they have a very high assurance process, to Jay's point. Receiving a passport, receiving a driver's license, receiving a national ID card. There's a rigorous process behind that. So I can ground it, and at that point of onboarding, I know who I am dealing with. We do the person binding at that point. And then later, when you're doing a high assurance or high consequence transaction, you're making a big change in an IT system, you are signing a document as an officer of a company, you bring that same thing in so that that biometric can come to play. This is one that Daniel's kicking on. There is a link in, well, again, you'll get the deck. There's a link to participate in the poll. That QR code is for participating in the poll. The poll is, when could you be available on April 14 or 15? The time of those calls will likely be Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Americas. If there's enough interest from APAC, we will make sure that that's available then too. A couple things that have happened, sort of what we've been doing over the past couple months. We've only been on a few public stages. January was quite busy. February, not so bad. One was Education House. Pearson is a big sponsor at World Economic Forum. And we participated at Education House. Education House is principally a group of nonprofits, international government organizations who are working to solve problems in the education space. One of the key messages we received there was there are a lot of problems in this space. AI has got everybody in education absolutely, utterly terrified, freaked out, and excited. There's both positives and negatives to it. Underpinning that, was a message that a few members had, which we agree with fully, is that we're going to need digital infrastructure here. We need to know what we can trust. That was one of the messages that I didn't give, that was given. That need for that digital public infrastructure, that trust infrastructure is being acknowledged. We also participated in what's called the First Person Project. They had a 4-day session in Seattle. It's right now right near Vancouver. So we were there just for the tech day, just for the last day of it, because a couple of our members were sitting there working. And I heard John say something that I was taking. He and Altaf were looking at the First Person Project, and part of their digital ID tooling took some of the concepts from there and said, hey, yeah, that's a really good idea. We do need a simple way for organizations to be issuing those credentials that are valuable. Same idea. Affinity is deep into the first person project, and they're taking the learning patterns which apply to the business side of things, but also deep in the first person side. We're doing the same thing. It's just saying, how do we align such that if I get an employee badge, that first person project can use it, but we're not dependent upon the first person project. So that was a very interesting day. We also participated in the Linux Foundation Summit on Human Agency. We had on stage Glenn Gore from Affinity, Billy Greco from Pearson, Wendy Seltzer, our governance advisor, Andrew Hughes from FaceTec, one of Jay's colleagues, Maxwell and myself were on stage there. The overall event is really asking the questions of really two different things. One is, what does AI mean as far as humans and human agency goes? But one of the underlying big messages was, how do we secure this? How do we trust this stuff? One of the statements that was made by the Cloud Security Alliance, blunt statement, which was this: the existing identity and access management, the IAM world, the term they used, they said it is utterly unsuited for agentic identity. It's not granular enough, and it doesn't scale to the levels that it needs to. By the way, if you notice, when Claude is down, most of the time it's an OAuth problem. They have hit the limits of what they can do scale-wise. But it was very interesting to hear the Cloud Security Alliance say that. We are going through, there we go, sorry, we're going through a major update of the website over the next 2 weeks. Parts of it will be there, parts of it will have to wait until I return from vacation. I'm leaving on Saturday. But one of the gaps we've identified and learned about, and it was hard to learn this because it's one of these things when people are quiet, you wonder why. Some of our commercial members were trying to figure out, where does Ayra fit in their world, in a B2B or a B2B2C, business to business, to consumer, to citizen, to customer, to client. Depends on what you want your C to be. I shouldn't say C to B because I'm about to. Civil society also wants to understand, where do they fit, whether that is a government story or more of a civil society, non-government story. How does it work with their working with businesses, when they're working with individuals, and when individuals and businesses are working with them? And similarly, the individual. This is always one of our focus. One of the comments we heard was, all Ayra cares about is first person project and the individual, which I can understand where the message came from. The reality is no, we're always concerned about the individual. We want to make sure that those who are interacting, the businesses who are interacting with the individual, the governments who are interacting with the individual, are doing this so on a level playing field in a trusted manner that are consistent with our principles. But I can see how others, because we weren't very, very crisp on, here's what it means to you if you are a tech stack provider, if you are a systems integrator, if you are an end user. You will hear all three of those phrases on the website and see that on the website in a new material. Tech stack provider and systems integrator is relatively clear and clean as far as I think most people understand what we're saying there. End user is someone who's deploying the technology. So Billy from Pearson is both an end user, does some of their own systems integration, and is a tech stack provider with Credly, and depending on what they're doing, but largely speaking, when they are dealing with their universities and the students and the training and assessment centers and the people who are being assessed, they're an end user. Fragment, also an end user. Major message that is in there as well is, one of the reasons why people have invested in Ayra is a recognition that changing requirements down the road is really, really expensive. So the message we're sharing, that is, if you don't consider the business and governance aspects of what you're deploying now and you bolt it on later, you are in for a world of hurt. This is a known pattern in requirements change. We're changing requirements in the beginning of a project. If you call it a cost of 1, if you change it down by the time you deploy it, it's now a cost of 25. That's a known pattern, been around for decades. So we're sharing that message and making sure people understand, it's not a heavy lift in the beginning. It's an easy thing. We've been dealing with folks, and Billy, for example, has been really helpful on bouncing that idea around, because if you're not planning for small changes, what do trust registries mean? What does it mean to have a governance and operating process that says, hey, we don't issue until the following criteria are met? If you haven't considered that and you try to bolt it on later, it's going to be pretty brutal. You're going to be seeing changes start happening, hopefully this week. It might need to wait until next week. But by April, these will be in full place, including executive briefing documents that are all available for that. We are also starting, and again, I know we're past time, I'm going to be sharing this around, but we are starting a set of documents that we're floating around the idea. A lot of this came out of the Summit on Human Agency, especially when we heard the Cloud Security Alliance say that IAM is utterly unsuited. We were asking why. So there's kind of four papers we're looking at here that tell 4 different stories that interlink. One is, how are you authenticating that thing? How are you authenticating the agent? Yes, you can sign everything. That becomes brutal. What if you had an authenticated pipe you were doing the thing across? You were talking MCP, A2A, all of the other lovely 3-letter acronyms that are used for all the communications between agents and with agents. The next one is the governance side. We know that, as Jay mentioned, cryptography, we can prove the credential is real, but how do I know that the signer is authorized? How do I know that you bound it to the human? That's a governance problem. Leads to the human anchor. How do I know that agent is acting for you? How do I tie me to the thing that I'm using in my day-to-day life, whether it's with or without an agent? That tells the story of person binding and what does it mean in a business context. Similarly, what can I get from the agents? That's talking and slides into the term of wallet or holder. What is the agent holding themselves? So you'll see in the newsletter, we'll get this out to you, that, oops, sorry. Why is my screen not moving? Okay, it woke up. If you want to do anything with this, reach out to us or hit the member portal. You'll see that there's documents. One of the links will come available probably tomorrow, Friday, for the first paper, the authenticated pipe. The rest will become available over time, but reach out if any of those, and again, you'll get a recording of this if you're interested. Couple of upcoming events to think about. One is in Q3. We have applied to be a co-organizer again for Global Digital Collaboration. It is running September 1, 2, 3 in Geneva. Those who were there, John Altaf was a rock star running around there representing. It was nice because he's representing both Yoti and Ayra. It was awesome. Cindy did some speaking. We had lots of member activity last time. I think we'll do fewer sessions. I am certainly not going to do as many sessions as I did, but what it provided was global recognition. It's not not necessarily, I mean, I'm sure this happened, but it's not a go find a customer event, but it is we're on the global stage type of event, and it was world class. We are also launching April 15th, first meeting of the Ayra Protocol working group, which includes Ayra cards. We will be having monthly work group meetings. You'll see the times here. That's all on the calendar. As a reminder, the calendar is always available in the member portal. We're going to make sure that it's in the newsletters. The difficulty we have is we need to make sure that some of these things are member only. That's clearly indicated in the calendar. Doesn't stop non-members from showing up, but we don't want to be police on that, but we'll do our best. But the Ayra Protocol Working Group is focused on, just like everything we do at Ayra, 3 different things: the business, the governance, and the tech. So what are the business cases we're finding value in? What are the business problems we need to ask and answer? Yoti and FaceTec both presented today. Both of them provide different capabilities. Is video sign-in a problem you need to solve? Do we need to define a dance and conformance criteria for something like that? How do I know when and how I should be binding a credential to a person? What are the things that are available to me? What are the trade-offs I have to figure out? The governance side, and gets also into conformance, which blends all of them, business, governance, and tech. But the conformance work is kind of special in the following way. It drives immediate concrete results. The conformance test suite, we're getting pretty good feedback. We just got some recent shout outs from the outside world who are following our open repo. That's a technical thing, but the conformance criteria also drive us towards a formal trust mark, which some of our members are leaning in on and want us to get to the point where we do have that formal trust mark because it is a competitive business advantage and a business simplifier for them. Those work in those groups will be done both in meetings as well as asynchronously. On a technical basis, major updates, the conformance tests, we've been visiting with several different members now on where things are. So the updates are there to drive activity. And if you need a one-on-one, book it with us or attend the technical office hours. Sheldon is always going to be on those technical office hours and can take any questions and bounce things around. What people are finding is by looking at the conformance test suite that gels for their technical people. Why do I care about the business and governance side? Because if you don't consider that, if you're purely technical driven, I wish you the best of luck. You were building a silo. On the business side, it starts having people think about the why do I care and why would this matter if I could say, yeah, I'm conformant? Does it help me, say, in a business context? The Ayra protocol is forming up more and more. The conformance test suite has been exercising that. You will see in the conformance test suite 3 profiles: holder, the wallet, verifier, and trust registry. All are using the Ayra protocol. They're working examples of it in flight. Trustworthy query protocol. Sorry for going fast. We're on well past time. It is going to the steering committee at Trust over IP on the week of the 15th or thereabouts. We're largely there, just going through the review committee, at which point it will become a Trust over IP approved deliverable. That's the technical term inside of Linux Foundation and JDF. I can't remember what JDF stands for, Joint Development Foundation, maybe, or something. It's what it means is formally, it is now a standard specification, recognizable by other SDOs. That's a good thing. We also have the Ayra Trustworthy Query Protocol profile, which takes the Trustworthy Query Protocol 2.0 specification and adds a few more things. The things that you need to make integrating an ecosystem easy. What are your assurance levels? What DID methods do you support? What are the actions and resources that you are concerned about that you're authorizing folks on? List the entities if you want, list the ecosystems that you're connected to. Those are just more easier for integration stories that were pulled out of the Trustworthy Query Protocol because it's a specification, not a how-to. The Trustworthy Query profile that we've created at Ayra is much more of a how-to. Governance-wise, few things. We have been discussing having an AGM in May 2026. We are realizing that was incredibly aggressive. The initial goals and what we've recognized is we can't rush the voting mechanisms, the advisory council stand-ups that are required. I'll explain why. As well, leading to the board nomination, the administrative things like D&O insurance, et cetera. It doesn't help us, doesn't help anybody. We're also realizing it takes a while for people to move paperwork around, and we're still seeing quite a bit. Those who are new, Jay and Yoti, by the way, you've signed up directly to Ayra Association. We don't have this transfer thing, but so welcome. We're aiming at mid-November, just prior to U.S. Thanksgiving. That also gives us a time to establish the member advisory councils, which I'll speak to in a moment, which really starts the governance muscle build, which is this. Those advisory councils, so there are 6 advisory councils. The Strategic Advisory Council, all strategic members get a seat on the council. The other ones, the associate, civil society, ecosystem, individual/ambassadors, and government advisory councils, those have elections. We have, I think, up to 12 seats. So in the beginning, it's not really elections. It's going to be more who wants to participate. Please jump in. That also, director elections will be voted for at the AGM. That's for the Ayra Association formal board of directors. We've been operating with a transitional advisory type of board to date. But before that, the following need to happen. This is when we started to back up the project timeline and went, oh, this is effectively impossible for May, is what we realized, the critical path. The member advisory councils have to be instantiated, which means you have to have signed your documents, you have to establish the council, and we have to, at that point, the member advisory council does a few things. It works to share amongst the member class, what do we need? What do we want to do vis-a-vis Ayra? But on a governance basis, they have to propose a list of candidates for its member class to go on the board. Members then, for the AGM, receive that slate of candidates for the board, and we have a vote during the AGM 2026 voting period. So when we back that up, we realized that one, that would be all we would be doing, and we would be accomplishing nothing else, which is not going to help. So that's why we have pushed it out, because it also is 11 months after the last AGM. So I think I've gone through pretty much everything there. Yes. Are there any further questions, any discussion items we want to have? Oh, I see chat. I missed chat.
I've just got very briefly, sorry,
Yep.
I did put my hand. Just back on some of your previous slides, I was just waiting till you
Yep.
finished, but where you were talking through on the sort of first personhood and other kind of aspects on those sort of different types of projects and the AI ones you're looking at, you gave a
Yep.
table. I think when you're looking at the agentic views,
Yeah,
it was
the
about
papers.
5. Anyway,
Yep.
I just thinking there, the additional one when you think of reusable wallets is to not forget the history, because the history itself is a self-perpetuating benefit that's going to grow. So it's,
Right.
again, not forgetting that authentication and auth is a point and shoot at a particular time for a particular event.
Yes.
But if I'm able to prove that this is the 17,000th time I've logged in and it's definitely me, that has a huge amount of
Yep.
implied assurance in that. If I'm able to share that without detail, if that makes, abstract that
Yep.
fact that I've opened 5 bank accounts and it's permission from me. It's a very
Yep.
powerful add-on, which I think a lot of that gets lost in the world of wallets because everyone kind of
Yes.
more thinks about transactional.
Yeah, and that's bang on. Part of you've reminded me, John, that part of the original message that we created for that authenticated pipe paper is on a technical basis, it's an authenticated communication channel. On a business basis, it's a relationship. Whether it's one-to-one, me to you, me to Yoti, or me to the end user who's using Yoti. Much like the analogy that's been used is it's in your brain, there's like a thing called the myelin. The myelin is what creates you do something once, you have a really skinny pipe. You do something 17,000 times, you got a really fat pipe and it's fast and it's solid. You want to be able to share that. I have a rich relationship with 2 banks. You
Yeah.
probably want to know me, as opposed to you've never heard of me. I have no history. I don't exist because I'm a faker. But yeah, leveraging the relationship is something we don't want to lose. I'm going to make a note of that, John.
It's somewhat of a party trick of mine of highlighting, we've got it in France, where we've got a lot of users that are joining in downloading our app because they're accessing porn sites. But
Yep.
no one likes that in the ID world. But then as you
No.
grow into the millions, then if you are a bank and you accept reusable digital IDs, you are de-risking your business because people watch porn. I just find that
Because
quite
yeah,
amusing that
and
no one else
AIs
really wants to
don't.
go down that route. But it's a fact. You're a less risky person applying for insurance.
Yeah.
Anyway, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's a definitely a risque way to get it to share the idea.
Mm.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. Well,
Any
thanks
other
very
questions,
much.
folks?
Good.
Nope.
Awesome.
Nope. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Al.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.